I stood in the venue lobby holding my coffee when Beatrice walked past me carrying a large folder. She smiled at arriving relatives, gesturing them toward the main hall. My future mother-in-law looked confident, polished, completely in control. I watched her spread papers across the reception desk while elderly aunts gathered around, nodding approvingly. Curious, I moved closer. The papers were seating charts, beautifully printed, color-coded by table, with every guest's name in elegant script. I scanned the layout. Table 1 held Beatrice's siblings. Table 2 featured Julian's cousins. Table 3 listed family friends I'd never met. My eyes moved faster, searching. Table 4, 5, 6. Business associates. Distant relatives. College friends of Julian's I'd heard about but never seen. My heart started pounding. Table 7, 8, 9. I read every name twice. Then 3 times. Nowhere on those charts, across 9 carefully labeled tables seating 140 guests, did my name appear. Not as Adriana Foster. Not as bride. Not as family. Not at all. I just stood there, frozen, while Beatrice's laughter echoed through the marble lobby. She was showing relatives how perfectly she'd organized everything, how smoothly this wedding would run. Then she glanced up and saw me staring at those charts. Her smile widened. Beatrice walked toward me, still holding one chart, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She looked pleased with herself, almost radiant. I tried to speak but my throat felt tight. She reached me and touched my arm gently, like comforting a confused child. "Adriana, sweetheart, you look concerned," she said softly. I pointed at the seating chart with a shaking finger. "My name isn't on here. I'm not listed anywhere." Beatrice glanced at the paper, then back at me, eyebrows raised in mock confusion. "Well, of course you're included, dear. You're under family. We didn't need to specify every single person individually." Her voice was calm, reasonable, like explaining something obvious to someone slow to understand. I shook my head. "But everyone else is listed. Every single guest has their name printed. Why not me?" She sighed, the way mothers sigh at stubborn children. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "Brides don't need titles on seating charts, Adriana. Everyone knows who you are. This is about guests finding their seats efficiently." She patted my arm again. "Trust me. I've done this before." Before I could respond, she turned away to greet another arriving relative. I stood there, the chart still visible on the desk, my absence glaring at me from expensive paper. I pulled out my phone and called Julian. Julian answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. Background noise suggested he was at his bachelor party gathering, probably already surrounded by friends. "Hey, what's up? I'm kind of busy right now." I kept my voice steady despite my hands shaking. "Did you know about the seating chart? Did you see it before your mother finalized it?" Silence. Long enough that I checked if the call had dropped. Then he exhaled slowly. "Mom handled all the logistics weeks ago. She's good at that stuff." "Why?" My stomach dropped. "Julian, my name isn't on the chart. I'm not listed anywhere. 140 guests are listed individually, but the bride apparently doesn't need to be included." More silence. When he finally spoke, his voice carried that familiar tone of exhaustion I'd been hearing more frequently lately. "Adriana, please. It's just a seating chart. We're getting married in 4 days. Is this really worth fighting about right now?" I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You knew. She sent you everything and you knew my name wasn't there." He didn't deny it. Just sighed again. "It's not a big deal. Everyone knows you're the bride. Mom just wanted things to look clean and organized. Can we talk about this later? The guys are waiting." He hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, understanding flooding through me. This wasn't a mistake. This was permission. That evening, Beatrice hosted a family dinner at her house. 40 relatives crowded into her dining room, celebrating the upcoming wedding. I sat beside Julian, smiling mechanically while conversations swirled around me. Beatrice stood at the head of the table, welcoming late arrivals, directing people to seats, playing perfect hostess. An older cousin I'd met once arrived with her husband. She spotted me and smiled warmly. "Adriana, the bride. How are you feeling?" "Excited." Before I could answer, Beatrice's voice cut across the table. "Actually, tonight Adriana's just Julian's +1. We're keeping things informal before the big day." She laughed lightly as if making a joke, but nobody else laughed. The cousin looked confused, glancing between Beatrice and me. "I'm sorry, I thought." Beatrice waved her hand dismissively. "No need to apologize. Easy mistake." She turned to discuss something with another guest, conversation moving on. The cousin sat down, avoiding my eyes now, clearly uncomfortable. I felt heat rise in my face. Julian kept eating, pretending he hadn't heard. Around the table, relatives exchanged glances but said nothing. Nobody defended me. Nobody corrected Beatrice. Nobody acknowledged what had just happened. After 20 minutes, I excused myself quietly, heading toward the bathroom. As I walked down the hallway, I heard Beatrice's voice from the dining room, light and amused. She was laughing about something. I couldn't hear the words, just that laughter echoing behind me. I couldn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop going through my email. Julian slept soundly in the bedroom, undisturbed. I searched for any correspondence about wedding planning, anything I might have missed. Then I found them. Dozens of emails between vendors and Beatrice, sent over the past 6 weeks. Subject lines like updated guest list, revised seating arrangement, final contract amendment. I opened them one by one, my chest tightening with each message. The florist email showed Beatrice changing centerpiece colors from my chosen soft peach to her preferred deep burgundy. The caterer email revealed menu changes, replacing my selected options with Beatrice's traditional preferences. The photographer email confirmed a shot list emphasizing Vale family legacy moments. Every message was professional, polite, authoritative. And at the bottom of each email chain, I saw something that made my hands go cold. Julian was copied. On every single message. He'd received every update, every change, every revision. He'd watched his mother systematically override my choices and said nothing. Responded to nothing. Just let it happen. I scrolled down further and found an attachment that made me stop breathing. The file name was simple, clinical, devastating. Revised ceremony structure, final version. My finger hovered over it for 10 seconds before I clicked. The document opened slowly, each line appearing like a small violence. I'd written personal vows 3 months ago, sitting in our apartment crying happy. Tears while choosing words that captured how Julian made me feel. I'd shown him those vows. He'd held me and said they were perfect. Those vows were gone. Replaced with a generic script I'd never seen before. We gather today to celebrate the union of 2 families, the continuation of the Vale family legacy, and the blessing of tradition passed from generation to generation. I scrolled down. Paragraph after paragraph praised family history, ancestral values, the importance of maintaining heritage. My name appeared twice. Julian's name appeared 11 times. The Vale family name appeared 16 times. At the bottom, in smaller text, was a note from Beatrice to the officiant. Please emphasize family continuity. The bride understands the importance of honoring tradition. My phone buzzed. A text from Beatrice. Trust me. This is better. You'll thank me later. I stared at those words until they blurred. She'd taken my voice, replaced it with her script, and genuinely believed she was doing me a favor. I closed the laptop very carefully, as if it might explode. Then I sat in the dark kitchen, not crying, just thinking. Something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something colder and sharper was forming. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to plan. The next morning, I called the bridal boutique where I'd ordered my dress. The woman who answered sounded busy, distracted. Whitechapel Bridal, how can I help you? Kept my voice steady. This is Adriana Foster. I have a fitting scheduled for tomorrow at 2. I wanted to confirm the appointment. The sound of papers rustling. Miss Foster, your appointment was rescheduled. Mrs. Vale called last week and moved it to this past Monday. She attended in your place to approve the final alterations. My vision went dark at the edges. I'm sorry, what? She attended my fitting. For my dress. The woman's voice shifted, suddenly uncertain. Yes, she said you were overwhelmed with wedding planning and asked her to handle final details. She was very specific about the changes needed. She had your measurements and everything. My measurements? From where? I'd never given Beatrice my measurements. What changes did she request? More paper rustling. The woman cleared her throat uncomfortably. Modifications to the neckline, sleeve length, and overall silhouette. She said the original design was inappropriate for a traditional ceremony. We added sleeves and raised the neckline significantly. Mrs. Vale approved everything. Closed my eyes. And did anyone call me to confirm these changes? Silence. Mrs. Vale said she had your authorization. Should we have verified that directly with you? Her voice had gone very small. Yes, I whispered. You should have. Hung up. I drove to the boutique immediately, barely remembering the route. The manager met me at the entrance, looking nervous. She'd clearly been briefed about the situation. Without speaking, she led me to a private fitting room and retrieved my dress. When she unzipped the garment bag, I barely recognized what I saw. My dress, the one I'd chosen carefully after visiting 6 different shops, had been transformed into something unrecognizable. The elegant off-shoulder design I'd loved was now covered by long, heavy sleeves. The sweetheart neckline that had made me feel beautiful was now a high collar that looked severe, restrictive. The flowing silhouette had been altered into something stiff and structured. More appropriate, Beatrice had told them. Appropriate for what? For whom? I touched the fabric, feeling how different it was. This wasn't my dress anymore. This was Beatrice's vision of what a Vale family bride should wear. The manager stood behind me, watching my face in the mirror. We can change it back. It'll take a week, maybe more, and there will be additional costs, but we can restore the original design. I kept staring at the dress, this costume that wasn't mine. Then something happened. The tears I'd been fighting stopped completely. My breathing steadied. My hands stopped shaking. I looked at my reflection wearing Beatrice's version of my wedding dress and felt clarity hit me like cold water. I'd been reacting, defending, trying to fix individual problems. That wasn't working. I needed to stop crying and start planning. Carefully, strategically, quietly. I smiled at the manager. Thank you. I'll be in touch. Julian's cousin Claire called me that afternoon. We'd met a few times at family gatherings, exchanged pleasantries, nothing more. Her voice was hesitant when I answered. Adriana. This is Claire. Julian's cousin. Do you have a minute? I sat down slowly. Of course. She exhaled shakily. I need to apologize. I should have said something at dinner last night when Aunt Beatrice called you Julian's plus one. That was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. My throat tightened. Thank you for calling. She continued quickly, words tumbling out. There's more. I need you to know what's been happening. Aunt Beatrice has been talking to family members for weeks, shaping how everyone sees you. She's been saying you're overly emotional, that you're struggling with wedding stress, that you need guidance because you don't understand how important families like ours operate. I felt ice spread through my chest. She's been telling people I'm unstable. Claire's voice dropped to almost a whisper. She's been very careful about it. Never outright cruel, just concerned. Worried. Suggesting you're a sweet girl but maybe not quite ready for the responsibility of marrying into the Vale family. She's been positioning herself as the stable presence helping you through your difficulties. Closed my eyes. This had been planned. Carefully orchestrated. Claire, why are you telling me this? She hesitated. Because I have screenshots. Text messages where she's coordinating this narrative with other relatives. And I think you should see them. Claire sent me the screenshots an hour later. 23 images of text conversations between Beatrice and various family members. I read them sitting on my bedroom floor, phone in shaking hands. Adriana's having a difficult time adjusting to our family's expectations. Please be patient with her. She's emotional lately, probably wedding nerves. Don't take anything she says too seriously. I'm handling most of the planning because she's overwhelmed. It's better this way. She doesn't really understand our family traditions yet. Give her time. Each message was carefully worded, sympathetic, concerned. Beatrice positioned herself as the understanding mother-in-law helping a struggling bride. But the effect was clear. She was telling everyone I was difficult, unstable, incompetent. She was building a narrative that justified her control while making me look incapable. One message to Julian's aunt made my stomach turn. Between us, I'm not sure she's the right fit for Julian, but he's committed now. We'll just have to guide her carefully and hope she rises to the occasion. Another to a cousin was even more direct. The wedding will be beautiful despite the challenges. I've made sure of it. I sat there reading these messages, understanding flooding through me. This wedding was never about celebrating Julian and me. It was about Beatrice demonstrating her control, her authority, her vision of what the Vale family should be. I was just the inconvenient obstacle she needed to work around. I spent the next morning reviewing every contract, every receipt, every financial document related to the wedding. What I found was both predictable and enraging. Beatrice had paid key deposits for the venue, caterer and photographer. Not contributions to help with costs. Actual contract deposits that gave her legal authority as the primary client. The venue contract listed her as the main contact with final approval over all arrangements. The catering contract gave her authority to make menu changes up to 24 hours before the event. The photographer contract specified she would review and approve the shot list. She'd built a legal framework that gave her control over every major element of the wedding. Julian and I were technically clients, but Beatrice held the contractual power. It was brilliant and devastating. But then I noticed something. A detail so small I almost missed it. The venue contract had a clause about primary contact designation. It could be changed with written notice and verification from all parties listed on the booking. The original booking listed 3 names: Beatrice Vale, Julian Vale, and Adriana Foster. All 3 of us had signed the initial paperwork, which meant all 3 of us had to approve changes. I pulled out the vendor files and started checking. Every contract followed similar patterns. Multiple signatories. Multiple approvals required for major changes. Beatrice had authority because she'd taken it, but the contracts themselves required consensus. She'd been operating in a gray area, assuming nobody would challenge her. I smiled slowly. I'd found the loophole. I started making calls. Professional, calm, precise. First, the venue coordinator. I explained that I was one of the primary contacts on the contract and needed to review the current arrangements. Could she send me copies of all approved changes? She hesitated. Mrs. Vale has been handling everything. I'd need to check if... I interrupted gently. According to Section 3 of our contract, all primary signatories have equal access to booking information and equal authority over arrangements. I'm requesting documentation of changes made under my booking. That's within my contractual rights. Silence. Then typing. You're correct. I apologize. I'll send everything within the hour. Next, the caterer. Same approach. I'm reviewing approved menu changes and need current documentation. Please send the finalized selections and any pending modifications. The caterer sounded confused. Mrs. Vale approved everything last week. I thought. I kept my voice pleasant but firm. I'm also a primary contact on this contract. I'd like to review her approvals before they're finalized. Can you send me what's currently scheduled? More typing. Of course. Right away. Called 4 more vendors. Photography, flowers, music, transportation. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Polite requests based on contractual rights. Each vendor, once they checked their paperwork, confirmed I had equal authority to Beatrice. By noon, I had complete documentation of every change Beatrice had made. And I'd quietly established my authority to modify them back. The florist asked the key question. Should we notify Mrs. Vale that you're reviewing arrangements? Smiled. Not yet. I'll coordinate with all parties before making any updates. That night, while Julian slept, I worked on the seating chart. Not Beatrice's version. I used the same software, the same elegant fonts, the same color coding system. But I redesigned the entire layout with surgical precision. Beatrice's closest allies, the relatives who'd been helping her control the narrative, were scattered across different tables. Not clustered together where they could dominate conversations. Separated strategically. Meanwhile, cousins like Claire, younger relatives who'd expressed quiet discomfort with Beatrice's behavior, were seated at central tables. Positioned where their voices would carry. Outsiders, friends from my side, people who didn't know the Vale family dynamics, were integrated throughout. Not isolated at separate tables where they could be ignored. Distributed deliberately. I placed Beatrice at table 1 as expected. But instead of surrounding her with supporters, I seated her with Julian's most independent-minded relatives. People who wouldn't automatically defer to her. Change was subtle. Someone glancing quickly at the chart wouldn't notice anything wrong. The layout looked professional, appropriate, thoughtful. But the power dynamics had shifted completely. I saved the file and sent it to the venue coordinator with a simple note. Please print this finalized version for the wedding. This supersedes previous drafts. Thank you. Then I sent copies to the caterer and other key vendors. Updated seating arrangements attached. Please use this version for all planning purposes. The venue coordinator responded within minutes. Received. We'll print these tomorrow morning. I closed my laptop and finally went to bed. The charts would be printed overnight, distributed before Beatrice saw them. By the time she noticed, they'd already be in place. Julian confronted me 2 days later, the morning before the wedding. I was packing my overnight bag for the hotel when he stormed into the bedroom, holding his phone like a weapon. His face was red, voice tight with anger. What did you do? My mother just called, furious. She's saying you changed everything behind her back, that you're sabotaging the wedding, causing drama right before the ceremony. I continued folding clothes calmly. I updated some arrangements, using my contractual authority as a primary client. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Contractual authority? Adriana, what are you talking about? Mom has been planning this wedding for months. You can't just swoop in at the last minute and change everything. I stopped packing and looked at him directly. Your mother erased my name from the guest list. She rewrote my vows without asking. She altered my wedding dress without my knowledge. She's been telling your family I'm emotionally unstable for weeks. And you knew. You were copied on every email, Julian. You watched her do all of it and said nothing. His anger faltered slightly, replaced by defensive frustration. She was just trying to help. She knows how to run these events. You're overreacting. The words hung between us like smoke. Overreacting. I'd heard that word a lot lately. I sat down on the bed, suddenly very tired. Did you ever choose me? In any of this, did you ever take my side? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched. Finally he spoke quietly. I thought keeping the peace was the right choice. I thought if we just got through the wedding, everything would settle down. I looked at him and saw clearly for the first time what I'd been avoiding. You chose comfort. You chose silence. You chose your mother. You never chose me. The morning of the wedding arrived cold and bright. I stood in my hotel room, getting ready with my small bridal party. My hands were steady as I did my makeup, calm as I stepped into my dress. Not Beatrice's version. The boutique had worked frantically for 48 hours, restoring the original design. Off-shoulder, sweetheart neckline, flowing silhouette. My dress. My choice. My sister zipped me up and squeezed my shoulder. You look beautiful. You look like yourself. Downstairs, guests were arriving at the venue. The ceremony would start in 90 minutes. I'd arranged one final detail with the venue coordinator. Updated ceremony programs. I'd written them myself, designed them carefully, had them printed at a local shop. Each program listed the ceremony order, the wedding party, the acknowledgements. And at the top, in elegant script, my full name and role were clearly stated. Adriana Claire Foster Bride. Below that, a personal dedication I'd written. With gratitude to everyone who saw me, heard me and stood beside me. Your support made today possible. Simple words. But everyone would understand exactly what they meant. The venue coordinator had promised to distribute them as guests entered. By now, they were already being handed out. Check my phone. A text from Claire. The programs are perfect. People are reading them. Beatrice just walked in. I smiled at my reflection. This version of myself that Beatrice had tried to erase and rewrite. Then I headed downstairs to get married. On my terms. Beatrice stood in the venue entrance, holding one of the ceremony programs. Her expression was frozen, that perfect hostess smile locked in place, but I could see tension in her shoulders, tightness around her eyes. She just realized something had changed. Significantly. She looked up and saw me approaching with my bridal party. Our eyes met across the lobby. For 3 seconds we just stared at each other. Then her composure cracked slightly. Just a flicker of confusion, frustration, loss of control crossing her face before she smoothed it away. But I'd seen it. That moment of realization that she wasn't orchestrating this anymore. She moved purposefully toward the ceremony entrance where the officiant was reviewing notes. I watched her lean in, speaking urgently, gesturing at the program. The officiant listened patiently, nodding. Then he said something quietly to Beatrice. She stiffened. He said something else. She shook her head firmly. He remained calm, professional, unmoved. I couldn't hear the conversation from where I stood, but I knew what was happening. Beatrice was trying to reassert control, questioning the program, probably suggesting we use her version of the ceremony order. And the officiant was explaining that the bride, the actual bride listed on all the contracts, had approved everything. That his authority came from me, not from her. Beatrice's smile was slipping now, composure fracturing as the reality settled in. She was losing control quietly, publicly, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Guests were watching. Relatives were beginning to notice. Whispers starting. She turned and saw people staring. Then she looked back at me, standing calm and ready in the lobby. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Just held her gaze steadily. The ceremony was scheduled to begin. Guests settled into their seats, programs in hand. The musicians started playing. My bridal party began walking down the aisle. I stood at the entrance with my father, waiting for our cue. Then I heard a commotion. Beatrice's voice, louder than appropriate, cutting through the music. Wait, excuse me, there's been some confusion about the order. The music paused. Guests turned. The officiant stood at the altar, expression patient but firm. Beatrice had approached him again, program clutched in her hand. She was trying to stop the ceremony, claiming there'd been miscommunication about the structure. The officiant listened politely as she explained. Then he spoke calmly, voice carrying clearly across the quiet venue. Mrs. Vale, I appreciate your concern. However, the bride approved this ceremony order directly with me 3 days ago. We reviewed every element together. Everything proceeding today reflects her explicit wishes and authorization. He paused, then added gently but unmistakably. The bride is the primary authority for ceremony decisions. This is her wedding. The words hung in the air. Guests sat very still. Beatrice opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked around and saw 140 people watching her. Not with sympathy, with understanding, with realization. The officiant nodded to the musicians. "Shall we continue?" The music resumed. Beatrice had no choice but to return to her seat. As she walked down the aisle, I saw her neck flush red. My father squeezed my arm. "Ready?" He nodded. We started walking. Every eye turned from Beatrice to me. The woman she'd tried to erase. Standing here anyway. In. Present. I reached the altar where Julian waited. He looked nervous, uncertain, like he wasn't sure what would happen next. The officiant welcomed everyone and began the ceremony. We moved through the opening elements smoothly. Then came the vows. The moment Beatrice had tried to control completely. The officiant turned to me. "Adriana, please share your vows." I pulled out the paper I'd kept hidden until this moment. Not Beatrice's script about Vale family legacy. My words. The ones I'd written months ago, sitting in our apartment, believing Julian and I were building something together. I read them clearly, voice steady. "Julian, I stand here today choosing you, choosing us, choosing the life we're creating together. I promise to be honest when truth is hard, to be present when presence costs something, to be myself even when conformity would be easier." I paused, letting the words settle. "I promise to honor the person you are, not the role others expect you to fill. I promise to build a partnership where both voices matter equally, where both perspectives shape our choices, where both of us are seen, heard, and valued." The vows weren't romantic in the traditional sense. They were specific, intentional, impossible to misunderstand. Everyone listening would know exactly what they meant, what they referred to. I choose this commitment freely, fully, and without reservation. This is my voice. These are my words. This is my promise. I folded the paper. Julian stared at me. The officiant waited. Julian needed to respond with his own vows. But he hesitated, clearly thrown by what I'd said. How different it was from what he'd expected. How pointed. Julian finally began speaking, stumbling slightly over words he'd written weeks ago. His vows were traditional, safe, generic. Promises to love and honor and cherish. Nothing wrong with them. Nothing particularly meaningful either. When he finished, the officiant continued with the ceremony. We moved through ring exchanges, unity ceremonies, final blessings. Then came the pronouncement. But before the officiant could declare us married, I did something unplanned. I turned slightly toward the gathered guests and spoke. "Before we conclude, I want to acknowledge everyone who supported us, who listened when listening mattered, who stood beside me when standing required courage, who saw me when others tried to make me invisible." My voice was calm, clear, deliberate. "Your presence here means everything. Your support made today possible. Despite attempts to remove my voice from this celebration, you ensured I was heard. I didn't say Beatrice's name, didn't point, didn't accuse directly, but everyone understood exactly who I meant, what I was referring to." The room went completely silent. Then, from the middle section, I heard a single person start clapping. Blair. Her applause echoed in the quiet space. Then her sister joined. Then another cousin. Then friends from my side. Within seconds, a wave of applause spread through the venue. Not polite, obligatory wedding clapping. Genuine, understanding, supportive applause. For me. For speaking. For surviving. I looked at Beatrice sitting in the front row. Her face had gone pale. Her perfect composure completely shattered. She looked around at the clapping guests, at the relatives who weren't supporting her anymore, at the social structure she'd built collapsing around her. The officiant smiled slightly and pronounced us married. Julian kissed me, but it felt mechanical, distant. We walked back down the aisle as newly married spouses. But everything had changed. The reception revealed the full extent of the shift. Guests circulated, drinks in hand, conversations flowing. But the dynamics had completely transformed from what Beatrice had planned. Her carefully scattered allies found themselves isolated at separate tables, unable to dominate discussions. Meanwhile, younger relatives and my friends controlled the central spaces, their voices carrying, their perspectives shaping conversations. I watched Beatrice try to circulate, greeting people, attempting to regain her hostess authority. But something was different. People were polite but distant. Conversations ended when she approached. Nobody sought her approval anymore. I overheard two aunts talking near the bar. Did you know she changed Adriana's dress without permission? And rewrote her vows. Can you imagine? That whole thing about Adriana being overly emotional. That was Beatrice's spin. The girl's been handling this remarkably well considering. I feel terrible we didn't see it sooner. The whispers spread like fire through dry grass. Guests compared notes, realized they'd been manipulated, understood the full scope of what had been happening. Beatrice's carefully curated image cracked completely. One of Julian's uncles approached her directly during cocktail hour. I was close enough to hear his voice, usually jovial and warm, now cold and disappointed. Beatrice, we need to talk about how you treated that girl. What we saw today was unacceptable. This behavior reflects on the entire family. Beatrice tried to laugh it off, deflect, explain it was all a misunderstanding. But he shook his head. I've known you 30 years. I know exactly what I saw. And so does everyone else here. He walked away. Beatrice stood alone, glass in hand, smile gone. The social power she'd wielded so carefully for decades was evaporating in real time. Julian found me during dinner, pulling me aside to a quiet corner. His expression was anguished, confused, like he'd just woken up and didn't recognize where he was. Adriana, I don't understand what's happening. Everyone's treating my mother like she did something terrible. People keep congratulating you in weird ways like you survived something. My uncle won't even look at me. I studied my new husband's face. He genuinely didn't understand. Hadn't connected the dots between his mother's actions, his own silence, and the consequences now unfolding. What's happening, Julian, is that people finally see what's been happening for months. Your mother tried to erase me from our own wedding. You let her. And today, everyone realized it. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. But she was just trying to help. She always does this, takes over, gets too involved. That's just how she is. You're acting like it's some kind of conspiracy. I felt exhaustion settle over me. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was a pattern. And you enabled it. He looked at me with something like fear. Are you saying you regret this? That you shouldn't have married me? I thought carefully before answering. I'm saying I married you hoping you'd finally choose me. That when it really mattered, you'd stand beside me instead of behind her. Today proved you still don't know how. His face went pale. So what does that mean? I touched his arm gently. It means this isn't about forgiveness, Julian. Not yet. It's about accountability. About whether you understand what happened and why it matters. Whether you're willing to change. He started to respond, but his mother's voice cut across the reception. Julian, come here. I need your help with something. We both turned. Beatrice stood near the cake table, beckoning impatiently. Julian looked at me, then at his mother, torn between us. Exactly like he'd been for months. Waited, wondering if he'd finally make a different choice. He took a step toward his mother, then stopped. Julian turned back to me, conflict written across his face. Adriana, I need to go, I said quietly. Show me what you choose. He hesitated, looking between Beatrice and me. His mother called again, voice sharper. Julian. My husband walked toward his mother. Not quickly, not eagerly. But he went. I watched them talk, Beatrice gesturing urgently, Julian nodding. Then I turned away. This wasn't about punishing him. It was about seeing clearly what I'd been avoiding. Later after dinner, Julian tried again. He found me talking with Claire and pulled me aside once more. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. For not defending you, for letting my mother control everything, for not seeing how bad it was. I know I messed up. I know I need to do better. His voice cracked slightly. Please tell me it's not too late. I looked at him. This man I'd married hoping he would grow, would change, would choose partnership over comfort. Julian, this isn't about one apology. It's about building something completely different than what we've had. It requires boundaries with your mother. Real boundaries, not just promises. He nodded eagerly. Whatever you need, I'll do it. I'll talk to her, set limits, make sure she knows. It's not about talking to her, I interrupted. It's about choosing me even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it costs you her approval. Can you do that? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Because he didn't know. Neither did I. I need time, I said finally. To figure out if this marriage can become what it needs to be. Or if the damage is too deep. Across the reception, I saw Beatrice watching us. Her expression wasn't angry anymore. Calculating. Already planning how to regain control. Already strategizing her next moves. The final confrontation came during the farewell send-off. Guests had gathered outside the venue to send us off with sparklers and cheers. Beatrice positioned herself at the exit, trying to orchestrate the moment. She directed people where to stand, when to light sparklers, how to line up. Playing hostess one last time, asserting authority over the final wedding moment. But people weren't listening. Guests politely ignored her instructions, arranging themselves however they wanted. When she tried to redirect someone, they smiled and moved anyway. The venue coordinator approached her gently. Mrs. Vale, the bride and groom need to prepare for their exit. Could you join the other guests? Beatrice looked at the coordinator in shock. I'm organizing this portion. I need to make sure everything proceeds correctly. The coordinator maintained her professional demeanor. Everything is already arranged. The bride gave us specific instructions earlier. We're following her timeline. Beatrice's voice rose slightly. I've been coordinating this entire event. You should be consulting me about. Actually, the coordinator interrupted politely but firmly. Miss Foster is the primary contact on our contract and has final authority over all arrangements. Her instructions supersede any other direction. It was the same message Beatrice had heard repeatedly today. But this time it landed differently. She looked around and saw guests watching. Saw vendors deferring to me, not her. Saw relatives turning away, no longer seeking her approval. Saw Julian standing beside me, not running to her defense. She'd lost. Completely. Publicly. Her authority was gone. The social power she'd wielded was evaporated. And everyone had witnessed it happen. Without another word, Beatrice turned and walked back into the venue. Away from the sparklers, the celebration, the farewell moment. She left early. Nobody followed her. Julian and I drove to our honeymoon hotel in silence. The weight of everything unsaid filled the car like smoke. We checked in, went to our room and finally talked. Really talked. I didn't understand, Julian said, sitting on the bed, head in his hands. I genuinely thought keeping peace was the right choice. That if I just avoided conflict, everything would work out. I didn't see how much it was costing you. I sat across from him. Your mother tried to erase me from our wedding. From our marriage. From your family. And you watched it happen because confronting her was uncomfortable. He flinched. I know that now. But I don't know how to fix it. I thought about this for weeks. We need new boundaries. Clear, firm, non-negotiable boundaries. No more letting your mother make decisions for us. No more prioritizing her feelings over mine. No more choosing silence when she oversteps. He nodded. I can do that. It's not about what you can do, Julian. It's about what you will do. Consistently. Even when she pushes back. Even when she makes you feel guilty. Even when everyone else wants you to just make peace. I leaned forward. If we're going to stay married, we need to build something different. Partnership where we're a team first. Where your loyalty is to us, not to keeping your mother happy. Julian was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke softly. What if I mess up? What if I fall back into old patterns? Then we deal with it. But you have to try. Actually try, not just promise. He reached for my hand. I want to try. I want this to work. I want us to work. I held his hand but didn't smile. Then prove it. Starting tomorrow. When your mother calls, when she's upset about what happened, when she wants you to fix things or make me apologize. Show me what you choose. 6 months later, I sat in my home office reviewing consultation notes. My new business, helping women navigate difficult family dynamics and protect their autonomy in major life events, was growing steadily. Clients came to me with stories painfully similar to mine. Mother-in-laws who overstepped. Partners who chose silence. Families who demanded conformity while claiming love. I taught them what I'd learned. Document everything. Know your rights. Build your support network. Speak clearly. Stand firm. Walk away if necessary. Julian and I were still married. It wasn't easy. He'd stumbled several times, falling back into old patterns of avoiding conflict with Beatrice. But he was trying. Actually trying. We'd established firm boundaries. Beatrice was no longer welcome to make decisions for us. She didn't have keys to our house. She didn't know our bank account details. She wasn't copied on important emails. At first she'd raged, called constantly, demanded meetings, insisted Julian was being controlled by me. But Julian, slowly and painfully, was learning to say no, to choose our partnership over her comfort, to defend me even when it cost him. We weren't perfect, but we were building something different, something honest. Beatrice's power over our lives had collapsed, not through my cruelty or revenge, just through boundaries, clarity, and refusing to be erased. My name stayed on that seating chart in that ceremony program, in every document and contract. I'd insisted on being seen, and eventually, they had no choice but to see me. The irony wasn't lost on me. The wedding designed to erase me became the moment I was finally, permanently visible. The event meant to silence me became the stage where my voice carried furthest. And my name, which Beatrice tried so hard to remove, was the one everyone remembered.